Yes, welcome back. We're with Kevin Annett, who's the field secretary of the International Tribunal into Crimes of Church and State. Welcome, Kevin.
Hello, Alfred, once again.
Yeah. So now you're on your way first to the U.S. Tomorrow, March 12th, to do some speaking, and then you're on your way to the Brussels.
That's right.
For the commencement of the March 31st, 2014 trial. Could you tell us again who are the defendants there, and what recent actions have been taken?
Well, the three defendants named in the second common law court trial in Brussels are the present Pope Francis, Jorge Bergoglio, the head of the Jesuits, Adolfo Pechon, and the Archbishop of Canterbury, Justin Welby. And people have asked, this case is about global child trafficking, basically, and especially having to do with the long history played by the Jesuits, especially, and the Vatican, and now the Church of England in explicitly using those churches as child trafficking operations. And, with the Pope Francis, of course, this has been talked about a lot. There's eyewitnesses, there's other evidence about him actively organizing child trafficking for the Argentine junta during the Dirty War, to grab the children of political prisoners. I mean, that's already been talked about a lot. The other two characters are not as well known. The Adolfo Pechon is, he's called the Superior General of the Jesuits. He is like a symbolic figure in this next case. Like at the Nuremberg trials, you can't put everybody involved in these crimes on trial, but you can use symbolic figureheads to show exactly the history of an institution that is committing a crime against humanity. And when you look at the long history of the Jesuits, the way that, for example, they were the group that established the model or the template for all of the Indian boarding schools, the Magdalen laundries, the institutions that were trying to deliberately alienate generations from one another to destroy their cultures. That was modeled by the Jesuits. And when you look at their role today, it's in many ways a criminal body. And so this is one of the reasons we're naming this man as a chief defendant. The third character is, again, less well known, Justin Welby. As the Archbishop of Canterbury, he's the one responsible for implementing the what's now being called the Holyrood Agreement, where former Pope Benedict and Queen Elizabeth Windsor actually agreed in September 2010 to apply the criminal policy known as criminal solicitanus to the Anglican Church as well, the Church of England. So that means now Anglican clergy are obligated to protect child rapists and not tell the police, to silence the victim. That was formalized in this agreement, and Justin Welby has implemented that. He has not only done that, not only enacted this policy of protecting child rapists and facilitating child trafficking through the Church of England, but in January 2012, he issued, right after he became Archbishop of Canterbury, he issued a memo to Fred Hiltz, who is the what's known as the primate of the Anglican Church in Canada. And this was the month after that we were commencing excavations at the Church of England Indian Boarding School in Brantford, Ontario. We had already unearthed buttons in the ground from the uniforms of children who had died at the school. We had also obtained bone samples, which subsequently turned out to be the bones of small children. That was confirmed by a man, Dr. Don Ordner of the Smithsonian Institute in Washington. And in order to conceal that, Justin Welby issued a memorandum to the Anglican Church in Canada, to the primate's office, that all of that evidence was to be suppressed, and any evidence linking members of the royal family to the deaths of children was also to be destroyed. Now, that was a directive from the Archbishop of Canterbury. That is undoubtedly related to the fact that Elizabeth Windsor was personally involved in the disappearance of at least 10 children from Indian residential schools in Canada. So when you look at all of those characters together, clearly they're representative of a whole system of genocide and child trafficking.
Now, shouldn't the Queen then also be a defendant in this action?
Now, theoretically, but the reality is you can't, under common law or any bona fide legal system, you can't be tried twice for the same crime. Now, Elizabeth Windsor has already been found guilty of crimes against humanity, which included child trafficking. Don't forget the verdict, which helped bring Pope Benedict down. The verdict of February 25th, 2013, that found Elizabeth Windsor, Pope Benedict, and others guilty of crimes against humanity. Part of the indictment was involving, child trafficking and other things. So it was the opinion of the trial division of the court that as a person, she would not be included in this lawsuit. She is symbolically, and as represented by the Archbishop of Canterbury, it's the Crown of England and the institution of the Vatican that are both on trial here through these representatives. There's a standing arrest warrant against Elizabeth Windsor, and in fact, when she arrives in Rome on April 3rd to meet Pope Francis, there will be an attempt to perform citizen's arrest on her at that time. So, it's kind of a legal point that it wouldn't be legitimate for us to, since she's already being found guilty by a bona fide court, to retry her for that same crime.
Now, there's a member of the civil judiciary of the United Kingdom, however, who might be added to the defendants in the March 31st.
Absolutely.
Trial.
There's don't forget, these are the three main defendants, but others, accessories and other agents of these people will also be named in the course of the trial that opens on March 31st. And that's the first examination hearing where we're going to be looking at all the evidence brought before the court. But the man you mentioned is a High Court justice in England. His name's Adrian Fulford. He's 61 years old. He's one of the top judges of the High Court in England. He's a direct advisor to Queen Elizabeth. He advises her on constitutional matters. He's also a notorious protector of child rapists. He is part of a group called PI, Pedophile Information Exchange, which the police in England have named as one of the main agencies for linking child rapists. They say it's one of the Scotland Yard inspectors was quoted as saying it's an industrial level of child raping activity going on. In other words, it's a massive network. And this Judge Adrian Fulford, so-called Lord Adrian Fulford, is right in that very deeply. He's organized. He was one of the original organizers of this PI group. He's held, when he was younger, he organized protests to defend the right of child rapists. And he has publicly advocated that the age of consent be lowered to 4. In other words, it would be legal for children as young as 4 to have sex. I mean, this is mind-boggling. It's a crime, and clearly, regardless of his position, he is guilty as a citizen for aiding and abetting child rape. And the amazing thing about this man is Tony Blair attempted to have him knighted. He became a Queen's Counsel in 1994, and he's a serving judge in the International Criminal Court. Now don't forget the ICC knocked down the attempt to sue Joseph Ratzinger on the grounds that there was a case brought before the International Criminal Court in The Hague by a group called SNAP in America and the Center for Constitutional Rights. They had 22,000 pieces of evidence linking Joseph Ratzinger to protecting child rapists, and the ICC threw it out, saying they didn't have enough evidence. Well, it's because of the influence of the judges like Adrian Fulford that kind of thing went on. So he will definitely, we're at least recommending to the court that Adrian Fulford definitely be named as a defendant in this upcoming case.
Now, this case will be tried again in Brussels in Belgium, and this past week, just over the last several days, we had a very high-profile illegal arrest of a of a member of the Belgian Parliament, Laurent, Laurent,
Laurent Louis.
Lawrence Louis,
Yeah.
who in fact had in the Parliament had exposed the pedophile network in Belgium going up to the royal family in Belgium. Many ministers and many prominent lawyers, heads of industry. It seems like pedophilia is what holds the ruling class of Belgium together.
Yes.
So, do you think that there's any link between your upcoming meeting with MP Louis and these events?
Absolutely, Alfred. You know, we'd been in touch with him. He's a very brave man. He's only in his 30s, and he's been campaigning to expose this high-level child trafficking going on and pay the price. You know, he was jumped. All he was doing last Saturday was standing out trying to collect signatures for to be renominated to run in the election, and the police came out of nowhere and started roughing him up, beating him up, and arresting him. They falsely arrested him and held him for, I think it was 6 hours or more. And there's actually up on our iclcj.com site, there's a picture of him having been beaten up and how bruised he is now. He plans to meet with us at the end of March when I go over there. I'll be arriving in Brussels in the last week in March, and we have a meeting set up with him. So of course it's related. This is a direct attack on him, on democracy, and on the ITCCS, on the Common Law Court. It's their way of saying publicly, watch out. This could happen to you too if you get involved with these guys. I mean, you know, it's the old thing they've done here in Canada for years. You know, against all of our supporters, and especially Aboriginal people, they get targeted that way. But you know, I often say to people, the people doing this are the ones who have to worry, not us, because we have the numbers, we have the truth and the law on our side. They're the ones who have to hide and act like criminals.
Now, at this trial, you will be bringing out for the first time publicly sworn evidence from eyewitnesses to the involvement of Pope Francis, that is Jorge Mario Bergoglio of Argentina, in child trafficking.
Yes.
Do you think that the media will cover this, or is that part of what they're trying to cover up?
I think our media will cover it. I think the alternative media and people on the ground who are really propelling this movement definitely be covered. The corporate media, of course, will not. They, you know, they're heavily involved. I mean, the classic case of that was when Time magazine names Pope Francis as the Man of the Year. Of course, they did with the same thing with Adolf Hitler in 1938. But you know, it's not to them that we look to get this message out. You know, we look to the grassroots, and gave you an example of how effective that is. I just got an email today from our ITCCS group in Coventry, England, and of course they've been very publicly active. One of their members was thrown in a mental hospital, and we you know, campaigned to get David Compan released, as you remember. But in the wake of that, they've been contacted by so many people. They now have groups in Birmingham and Manchester that have linked up with them. There's a whole Midland area in England now that are actively organizing common law courts. They are issuing arrest warrants against known child raping priests. They are organizing church occupations, Catholic church occupations, to name these people responsible for these crimes. So there's an amazing groundswell happening because of this, and that's how these things change from the bottom up.
So, will the public be able to tune into these broadcasts, or find them online, or look at some of the proceedings, or how can people be involved in this?
Well, the initial hearing, don't forget, March 31st, is the examination hearing. So, for example, as people, if you followed itccs.org, you'll see that there has been a public summons issued against these three primary defendants, the Pope, the head of the Jesuits, and the Archbishop of Canterbury. That public summons was posted on March 3rd and gives them 10 days to respond. So the fact of posting that on the internet, as we did, meant we were serving them publicly. They have until March 14th to respond. Now, as we say in the summons, if they don't respond to the charges or agree to show up on March 31st for examination, where each side can look at the evidence of the other, this is normal pretrial procedure. If they don't respond in any way, the court will issue on behalf of them a plea of what's called nolo contendere, which means not contested. So, as happened in the first case, by not contesting these charges made against them publicly, they are not defending their own good name, they're not disputing the charges, and that can weigh heavily against them in the final verdict. That's going to start on March 31st. In the month and months to follow, the Citizen Prosecutor's Office will then systematically present the evidence. And the first time we did, the first case we didn't actually post the evidence until the verdict was up. We hope to do it differently this time. We hope to have a whole section of our website where they'll be running postings of the evidence. For example, the man living in Spain in exile who says he was sitting in on meetings where Pope Francis was agreeing to, or at the time it wasn't the Pope, but Jorge Bergoglio was agreeing to traffic the children of political prisoners. Those kind of testimonies we hope to have up online. Now, don't forget, that's got to be also with the whole security factor, which is that we have to protect these witnesses. And whatever the court will decide, they might have closed hearings, we don't know yet. It hasn't started. I'm not over there yet to consult with folks about that, but so it could be any combination of those things.
Now, so to what website or websites should people go to keep current?
There's two. There's the International Tribunal into Crimes of Church and State. That's kind of the overarching body that sponsors these things. It's itccs.org. And then there's the International Common Law Court of Justice site. That's iclcj.com. iclcj.com. And, it'll be posted on both of those sites.
Now, with the first trial against Pope Ratzinger on similar grounds, the net result of that verdict under natural law and under international humanitarian law and international criminal law eventuated in the resignation of Pope Benedict Joseph Ratzinger and essentially the fall of his apparatus. The first resignation in 600 years is fairly historic, and you've established that. Do you foresee any consequences, similar consequences, or what consequences are you seeking out of this trial of Pope Francis and the head of the Jesuits, Francis being a Jesuit?
Right. Well, in one sense, it's even more fundamental here in this case because we are not just talking about one pope. We're not even talking about that particular history within the Catholic Church where child rape was institutionalized through the law Crimen Solicitanis. We're talking centuries-old crimes against humanity. And the aim is to disestablish the institution, clearly. Because criminal bodies do not have the right to operate. They don't have the right to receive taxes or political recognition. As a matter of fact, the Rome Statute of the ICC, the International Criminal Court, says that citizens are obligated not to cooperate with governments or any authority that is engaged in these kinds of crimes. So we have international law completely on our side on this. And the other thing to realize is that the way these verdicts are enforced, this is a new thing that we've created here. People often say, well, okay, they've got the army and the police and everything on their side and all this money. What are you going to do to that? Well, two simple answers to that. First of all, we are forming common law sheriffs, and in fact, the court has authorized the creation of these common law peace officers to enforce these warrants. And in fact, as we speak, there's training workshops being organized in Canada and the U.S. and England to train people in how to operate as a common law sheriff. Secondly, we intend and have started to deputize existing police officers. So we'll go up to them and say, for example, in Canada, as we've talked about in previous postings, the oath of allegiance to the Crown of England is now null and void. They are not legitimate authorities, and they're free of their obligation to obey the Crown. So whether it's in Canada, England, any Commonwealth country, the police and others, judges and politicians and everyone, are free from those oaths of office. And so they are now given the opportunity to do the right thing and to get on the side of actual law. Because don't forget, the courts are operating often in a very illegitimate manner. And the example of that, Judge Fulford, an open supporter of child rapists, in a high judicial office, he shouldn't even be sitting on the bench. We're trying to reinstitute actual rule of law here. So, I mean, this is the thing to keep in mind, that it isn't some particularly radical thing we're doing. We're just applying a whole tradition of common law against people in authority, the heads of state and churches that are engaged in these crimes.
How long a period of time do you foresee this series of trials in Brussels to go on for?
Well, it's open-ended, Alfred, which means that with a case this big, I imagine it going, well into the summer. It's hard to tell, really. We are still in the process of, and I can tell you one thing, there are other witnesses that have said they're willing to come forward, but, when something happens like what happened to that member of parliament in Belgium, Laurent Louis, it's designed, those things are done publicly to scare people off. The way, when I was thrown out of the church, it was the only public defrocking of a minister in United Church history in Canada. I mean, that was deliberate. That was just a show trial to tell other clergy to not start talking about all the company's dirty secrets. Well, it's the same with what happened with Laurent Louis. They're very worried about people in the system coming forward now, as this fellow who used to work for the Argentine junta is doing. This is designed to scare people off. So, on the other hand, more people are coming forward. So that'll be a long process of getting their statements, providing them with a kind of security, and that's why it's open-ended. I'm not sure when the verdict will come in, but we're starting it. That's the important thing.
Yeah, I know that it was very fortunate that we had the videotape testimony of the eyewitness to Queen Elizabeth Windsor and her consort Prince Philip abducting 10 indigenous children from a residential school here who were never seen again. So will you have similar backup videotape
Yes.
testimony?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, as we mentioned, that testimony by William Coombs of seeing Elizabeth Windsor take those children out of the Kamloops residential school in October 1964. William's testimony about that is in my keeping. The copy is kept in the ITCCS archives and with other people around the world. So that videotape testimonies of, for example, deceased witnesses and others who are in hiding definitely will be entered as part of the evidence in the docket.
Yeah, and what were the circumstances that William Coombs could not appear at the trial in the UK?
Well, the way it happened, Alfred, was for about 6 months before he died, William had been appearing on my show on Vancouver Co-op Radio talking about what he had seen. And he was to come to England initially in May 2011, which is also the month I got tossed out of the country, not accidentally. But in February, before he was to come, he was ordered by Vancouver Native Health, which is a government-run operation, ordered to go for tests down at St. Paul's Catholic Hospital, in the west end of Vancouver. He was healthy. In fact, I had met William. He had stopped drinking. He was feeling a lot better about himself because of his involvement in our work. And he went to St. Paul's Hospital. His partner, May, went with him. She said they injected him with something. He was in a coma within 6 hours. They transferred him to Vancouver General Hospital, and then they arbitrarily pulled him off life support the next day after less than 48 hours. It was barely a day. And they didn't consult the family. They gave no diagnosis. They just pulled the plug on him. So I believe it was definitely, they killed him, for sure.
Yeah, so this murder of a key witness to Elizabeth Windsor and her consort, Prince Philip, abducting 10 young children who were never seen again, while they were visiting Canada and British Columbia as head of state. This can be traced directly back to the Queen.
Yep.
And now the intimidation of the Belgian member of parliament as the trial of Pope Francis starts. This can be traced directly back up to the Vatican.
Exactly. The thing to keep in mind is that Elizabeth Windsor is a convicted felon, and Joseph Ratzinger is a convicted felon. They're standing arrest warrants. That's why he's hiding out in the Vatican. If he wasn't guilty, he would be traveling around giving lectures, going to monasteries, whatever ex-popes do. But he's hiding there, literally, under the protection of the Italian government. And Elizabeth Windsor is, there's been a lot of speculation about, that she's on the way out. But definitely she stopped, she was intending on going to Rome right after the Pope Francis was elected. But that was canceled, and now she's going on April 3rd, probably to work out the terms of the absorption of the Church of England back into the Church of Rome. Now, even if she hadn't been convicted already, that's an indictable offense right there. She's violating her coronation oath. She should be deposed. She should be forced to abdicate just on that ground alone.
So now this trial coming up is of Pope Francis and of the Jesuits. And so if the outcome of that is that they both become convicted felons, then what?
Well, I mean, the repercussions are amazing, because it means that, these, as with the Catholic Church generally, these institutions are what's called, under the UN Convention on Transnational Organized Crime, they're transnational criminal bodies. It means they are laundering money for criminal bodies, which we know the Vatican Bank does. They're trafficking in human beings and little children. You see, child rape in the Catholic Church isn't about random priests hurting kids. It's an organized system of child trafficking. It's involved at the level of Catholic orphanages, which provide a certain quota. You see, adoption agencies will go to the Catholic Church and give them a number of kids they need. The Catholic Church then targets vulnerable women, brainwashes them to give up their child. There's even signs outside St. Paul's Hospital in Vancouver saying, "Give us your child. If you're not a worthy parent, give us your child." That's so they can traffic them through the black market. I mean, it's a very lucrative industry. It's not even underground, and this organized trafficking in human beings, this is alone, if there was a legitimate legal system at work in our countries, these bodies would be prosecuted. That's why we have to take the action when our courts are not.
Now, we're coming to the end of the end of this segment, but what sort of thoughts do you have for our viewing audience about not only this upcoming trial, but these times when these institutions that have been institutions of oppression for millennia, literally, are now so transparently being judged for their crimes?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's definitely, people talk a lot about this being the last pope. Well, I mean, it isn't just the last pope. I mean, these institutions are coming down as we speak. And it's funny the kind of calls I'll get in a week. People who are in the system basically saying the same thing. They know the systems are not operating. We're living in a time where everyone is expecting imminent disaster. And the only thing that's going to get us out of that is people doing a big mental shift and realizing that we don't have to have allegiance anymore to these institutions with so much blood on their hands. And in fact, it's up to us to reclaim our traditions, reclaim the law. People reclaim their religions from these, these ideologies and ways of operating which have used those churches as genocidal institutions. So it's up to every one of us watching to take that action. We've already shown people one way to do it. But it's really, it starts from within, from this commitment to not be part of this murderous global system anymore. And so, this is something, part of a much bigger thing. And I would dare to say it's a whole spiritual renaissance we're going through at the moment. It's a great opportunity for people to become aware in this way.
Well, thank you. We want to thank you for your time today, Kevin, in being with us. And we'd like to invite you back as these events develop. Thank you.
Thank you, Alfred. And when I'm back from Europe, I'll be happy to do that. Thank
Great.
you.